All right, as they leave, we'll move along swiftly. I'm going to ask our second session panel to join us, riding the superfood wave and building the future of macadamias, the healthiest choice. I'm going to ask our chairman for the session, Daniel Jacobs, to join us. And then I'd like to welcome the team, Jayne, Bullen, and Mark Penter as well.
Good morning, everyone, as well. So, for us in the macadamia industry, we're quite close to the macadamia industry because we literally started by roasting a nut in the kitchen. So, today I'm going to just give you a little bit of an overview in terms of the superfood, in terms of what sits within the macadamia as a kernel. Then from there, I've got the privilege to be joined by Jayne Bullen. So Jayne will be presenting the preliminary findings of the Noakes Foundation 2021 research study, the health benefits of macadamia oil in the human diet, and she'll be discussing the key points of the study, importance of research in the field, how it will benefit the macadamia industry, and exciting future research possibilities that goes around that as well. Okay, so on Mark's side as well. Mark's side will be focused mainly on the macadamia fatty acid profiles affected by the environment, the time of season harvested, the cultivar, and what the aforementioned effect is in terms of quality and shelf life. In the fatty acid profiles, he specifically wants to have a look in terms of the difference in terms of the cultivars and what the implication is in terms of marketing. So the latter is more about theoretical, more discussion of a point of discussion, if I'm right as well. So I've been asked by SAMAC to actually do this presentation as well. Just give you a little bit of overview. So obviously we're not backers, we're not public speakers. So if we're nervous, just live with us. So riding the superfood wave of building macadamias. So if you look at where the session started in terms of the keynote, and the industry and where it's going, it is actually quite reassuring that you guys is actually on the right track as well. Because years back when we started packing macadamias, we literally started in the kitchen, we roasted it, put it in a bag, and up we go, and everything just went really, really well. So today, if I can get the switch. Today it's completely different. If you think that you're just going to pack something into a bag as well, it doesn't work that way anymore. We call it, we actually design products. So what we do is we have a look at the category, we analyze the category, have a look at the opportunities, we had a look at the market space, we had a look at the health trends, we had a look in terms of trends, what's new in the market as well. But no product will succeed in the market any day anymore if it doesn't conform to these four pillars. So in essence, you've got your environmental impact. So that is what is your effect in terms of holistic well-being. And we'll talk a little bit about flexitarians as well and where flexitarians fits into the whole thing as well. The second thing is social impact. In terms of what your actual social impact is and why. Then it is obviously about the health benefits, which I'm going to touch on. You've got two experts which will take you more into depth. I'm not a food scientist. I just pack and make products. Then in the product side as well, it's all about the newness, the innovation, and whether the product is relevant, yes or no. So just on the environmental, it is actually non-negotiable. We had this session this morning about sustainability and where macadamia sits. It is non-negotiable. It is for people. It is the first priority on the whole thing as well. If they consume a product, is it sustainable? What is the environmental impact on that product as well? And from that as well, if you pass that hurdle, you're actually going to go to the next level. If you go to, and there's a couple of things that happen, and with social media, this information becomes really available like in 2 seconds. What we found is a lot of people found that there's something that good news doesn't really spread, but bad news spreads like in 2 seconds. You know, it's like when someone goes to you and say, did you hear you're not allowed to tell over? Then you know it's national and it's international. And we've traced some of these implications. To give you an idea, within the Woolworths teams and within the retail teams, there's teams that sit and just scan social media continuously to actually understand the impact of what's happening. Almonds is started getting noise in the system about the bees, as well as the whole thing about the irrigation with the Colorado River. On palmolene, palmolene is a big issue, and there's a stage where people accept responsible, and there's a RSPO where it's traceability, but there's a stage where they say we don't want it anymore as well. And with palmolene, we're actually sitting within that whole scope as well. So, questions on sustainability. Within sustainability, as Guy touched on, localize. Local is a big issue as well. It sits within the carbon footprint. It's about your water footprint. And when you actually Google and research, you'll have a look at all the nut commodities is graded and geared in terms of what their footprint is, in terms of what their water consumption is, what the effect of insecticides. So what you guys has actually started touching on, which is really great news this morning, is about the water footprint, landfill, insecticides, deforestation, your whole carbon footprint, and also your product yield. I mean, you guys do a lot of stuff within the product as well, and it yields a lot of users. But you guys do have a responsibility as well to start speaking about it as well and start telling it as well, because it comes to the equation that the more you tell what you've got, the more people comes at ease using the product as well. So, social impact, we call it the guilt-free eating. So when that lady that shops at Harrods got a lot of free time, so she Googles everything, she researches everything as well. And when she spends her money, she wants to make sure that it's not just about the products, not about the taste, but there is a contribution to something else, to the better of mankind. Whether it's so there was actually a study where they had a social responsibility thing behind one bar that they actually sold, and the sales grew 4 times. So within that social responsibility as well, so a year or 2 ago, I received a phone call. It was about 5:30 in Sunday morning, and the CEO of Woolworths phoned me and said, can you send me pictures? And the actual pictures was about, they wanted to see the hands of the cashew suppliers that we actually supply. So this is the kind of stuff that can kind of actually kill your industry. So you guys need to be very careful in terms of what you're using and what is in the industry available. It's about the child labor, the labor as well. The other thing as well, which comes to this whole thing as well, which you guys need to be well aware of, is number one is this, what is the risk and how do you mitigate and manage those risks, and what is the social investment and contribution that you actually do? And the biggest thing as well, do you guys actually tell the story? Is the story being told in terms of what you do? Because there's a lot of good being done in the industry as well, that doesn't always feature to the other side of the equation as well. Health benefits, I'm just going to fly through it. I mean, I've got experts around the table which could tell us a lot more in terms of the actual details. Your macadamia nut stands quite well within a healthy portfolio. It's got the right fat components in terms of unsaturated fat. It's got the fibers for your gut health. It's got your vitamin E, your antioxidants. It gets you smaller manganese, thiamine, your copper as well. So within the product itself is there to stay, and it's there to carry within those as well. There's if we talk a little bit about the flexitarian lifestyle is not anti-meat. It's about holistic well-being. It's about your whole contribution in terms of society and for the environment as well, to make sure that you actually contribute something to the environment as well. And that's why it becomes so important that the whole picture almost tick the approval of your product and product users as well. I mean, there's a lot more details that will come specifically within the keto-friendly diet and the free fatty acids in the profile. There is a bit of a negativity around macadamias, which is the specific thing that it does carry allergens. It's not as risky as your peanut allergens, which is a big issue as well, but it's something to be aware of, and it's something that we try to manage within the industry as well. So there is a little bit of a negativity. So products made with macadamias, we were bought a couple of years ago, a year or two ago, and what we actually did is we did a range of macadamias. So there's literally not much that you cannot do with a macadamia. From a wrap, from a pizza base, from a rusk, from a, you name it as well. And we played with the product. The biggest thing about a macadamia, which is so beautiful as well, is that the fact it's one of the products that gives you a natural sweetness. And your natural sweetness, your sugar content within the commodities as well, is sugar is a big no-no in the world. Diabetes is the biggest growing disease in the world. So if you can have something which naturally delivers the sweetness as well, you've got a great product. So you guys are blessed. You can make a lot of product as well. You've got a beautiful product as well. I mean, this is just some of the stuff that we've done. So there's a lot of stuff that we actually developed. So there's bars, there's nuts, there's confectionery items as well. There's nougats. I mean, most of you guys hopefully eat the stuff, but please support if you don't. There's oil, there's the flours, there's the granolas. A big thing in the oil and the flours, there's a huge trend towards gluten-free. So you've got your full-fat flours, and there's a huge opportunity in terms of defatted flours, which actually creates alternative products within those as well. I mean, you get your milk alternatives, you get your oils, you get your cheese spreads. The biggest trend and growing area in the world now sits within your vegan meats and your vegan cheeses. We're fortunate that we're actually going to launch a vegan cheese within Europe next year, which is based on a macadamia, which is really beautiful. It's a macadamia and a coconut cream blend. So yeah, cosmetic, you guys know. I mean, all the oil that you press goes into the cosmetic industry. So I mean, it's really amazing. Yeah. So I mean, I think what we've said is that you're very fortunate. You've got a beautiful product. I mean, the amount of work that I've seen being done in your industry is really amazing. But I think you need to look after it. I think that's the most important thing of the whole thing on the table. So, following me, we're going to ask Jayne Bullen to just give us a little bit more details on her side as well. So Jayne Bullen believes in the research in healthcare, research in the healthcare needs a better understanding, more funding, and strong minds. As COO of the Noakes Foundation, she established Eat Better South Africa alongside with inspiring colleagues and Prof. Noakes. She believes in building stronger partnership in the nutrition and science game. Jayne realized the disconnect between brand research and obviously their budget limitation and human health research, which made her decide to leave the formal research work. She committed herself to bringing global experience into new areas that affect the change in human health. Jayne is a MBA Chevelin Scholar, as well as High Diploma in Marketing and International Relations graduate. After MBA at Leeds University, she focused on the regulation of marketing of children food into the food as well as the fast food categories. Later, Jayne conducted pan-European media research and strategy evaluation in the areas for various global health bodies and brands. And as extension of a joint vision for the future in human health and better healthcare systems, she co-founded the Nutritional Network and has been the MD since it was founded in 2018. Jayne?
Thank you. So I hate doing this. I always get irritated when people do it to me, but can you stand up and help me with some quick research, please? So they say that sitting is the new metabolic smoking, so maybe you can use it as an opportunity to have a quick stretch. So if you have any of the following conditions, or any of your immediate family does, so that means your parents, grandparents, or children, not your spouses, your genetic relations, you can please sit down. Type 2 diabetes, overweight or obesity, anxiety or depression. If you're on any chronic medication like statins, glucophage, anything like that, please sit down. If you have any allergies, if you suffer from macular degeneration or retinopathy, if you suffer from, or any of your genetic connections suffer from hypertension, please sit down. Insulin resistance, please sit down. Epilepsy or any neurological diseases, please sit down. ADD, any nutritional deficiencies, please sit down. Any neurological diseases, please sit down. I'm standing here because I know that I would be sitting long ago. So keep standing, those of you that didn't need to sit. And just have a look around. Those of you that are still standing, congratulations. You're probably the group of people in this room. You can sit now. But as you can see, that's probably under 8% of the audience. So what the hell has this got to do with macadamia nuts? So obviously you are the small percentage in this room that if you came to one of the 6,000 doctors that we've trained around the world on metabolic reversal of disease through diet, they might not immediately put you onto a carbohydrate restrictive diet. The rest of you, they would. So what's that got to do with the macadamia industry and why we're here as the Noakes Foundation? Of course, you mentioned in your talk prior to this that macadamias are on the green list for a ketogenic and banting diet. If you follow a medical diet for epilepsy, macadamia nuts are one of the only nuts, they are in fact the only nut you can eat. They're also the lowest carbohydrate nut. So banters or ketogenic people love them. Tim Noakes eats macadamia nuts all the time. He eats one meal a day and then he nibbles on macadamia nuts a lot. So we are doing a study. Is Jill White here? Are you here, Jill? There you are. I just want to thank Jill White because she saw the connection between the metabolic research that we need to do in the macadamia industry and the low carbohydrate diet and why it matters. And this study originated from her vision. So thank you, Jill, for that. So let's go. So what the Noakes Foundation does is we do research into metabolic and dietary health. We look at food policies and systems, and we look at the future of human health. And we do that through education in underserved local communities. So we do reversal of chronic disease programs, typically with women in township settings that have either hypertension, obesity, or other chronic diseases, and we take them off their medication, often, particularly for hypertension, within 3 weeks of adopting a low-carbohydrate diet. And much of our work is around simple awareness of the absolute excessive amounts of refined carbohydrates and sugars that we have in our diets, especially our children's diets, and how to restrict and limit that. We also train medical professionals around the world in how to implement the treatment of chronic disease through nutritional advice and often nutritional ketosis in certain contexts. The study that we're doing for SAMAC and for the macadamia industry is a really, really simple and really profound and interesting one. We're looking at the effect that nut oil supplementation has on metabolic health markers when compared with different oils. So we decided to use coconut oil, macadamia oil, and olive oil. And we took a group of 60 participants over an 8-week period. We've got a team of consulting doctors kind of to bring in a couple of elements of global best practice. We conducted a literature review, but I'm not going to go into the details of that because of time limitations today. So we've taken a group of 60 people, non-obese and non-diabetic, so generally a healthy-ish group of people, and we put them for 8 weeks onto 45 mils of one of the 3 oils. So they stick to their normal diet, they do whatever they've been doing, which is their control prior to that, and they add 45 mils of a particular oil to their diet every day for 8 weeks. And we're going to just look at some of the preliminary results. So it's a bit of a bias towards women in the group, and as you can see, the age is quite well spread out across all ages. Why this study? So our hypothesis was and is that through the supplementation of good oils into the diet, there'll be metabolic changes and changes to the inflammatory markers in the human body and other categories that could affect the organs, particularly the neurological system and the metabolic systems. And we believe that macadamia nuts are the golden nuts in terms of human health. So please don't share this data because we've only got about 40, I think we're actually on 46% of our full data in here, so it's not comprehensive and complete. We wanted to share just a couple of the markers that have been interesting to note. Obviously, you can see which is which because we've put a little symbol there. So we've typically looked at a spread across people that are on a low-carbohydrate diet and a standard diet. So we mix them all in together. We didn't only use ketogenic diet. So we're looking at HDL cholesterol, which is allegedly the good cholesterol, also very much up for debate. Not much of a shift in that category, but we do see that it went up quite significantly with olive oil, in particular, with people on a standard diet, which was something a little bit unexpected. It also went up in both categories when they took coconut oil. And macadamia, it marginally went up with LCHF, came down with the standard diet. GGT, which is a liver marker and pancreatic inflammation marker, this is something you want to keep low. All of these are in normal range still, except for that's going a bit high over there. Those people were quite high. With macadamia, they all came significantly down, which is really interesting to see. And with all of the other oils, they went up. Not a good sign. So another tick for macadamia over the other two oils. Again, here with lipase, we saw that lipase came down with the macadamia group and largely, to some extent, went up there, a little bit up there, down there, down there. So early data, it's hard to say what it's going to say with the final data set, but some very interesting things came in with amylase. Again, another pancreatic and partial inflammatory and digestive health marker. We see that it came down in the macadamia category, relatively noteworthy, and went significantly up in the olive oil on a low-carbohydrate diet and coconut oil on an LCHF diet. So fasting glucose, which is the most interesting for us at the Noakes Foundation because we deal with type 2 diabetes. This is the slide that made me do a little happy dance. And when I saw the data set, I started taking this seriously for the first time because when we see that healthy people's glucose comes down, so as you can see, all of this is within normal range. So you want to be under 5.4 if you have a healthy fasting glucose range. All of these people are healthy, but significant improvements here that we're seeing. So this is quite dramatic to see a reduction like that within 8 weeks for a healthy average person that hasn't changed anything else in their diets. And then we see something that's quite concerning going on here with olive oil supplementation. And again, not as concerning, but there's an increase here in the coconut oil side. So a lot of reasons why this could happen, but particularly interesting is the potential benefit that macadamia nut oil has for diabetics in terms of a supplement. And what we know is that, it's brilliant. This is a very, very exciting piece of data, so I'm really looking forward to the final results. ESR, which is a strong marker of inflammation in the body, inflammation in the body, again, came down dramatically here, particularly in the LCHF category with macadamia, and then it came down in the other categories too, except for that one. On the standard diet, it went up a bit. So anecdotally, what people are saying that are on the study, I can see it here, I don't have to point, that they've been able to, of course, curb their appetite. So we're seeing that their appetite's reduced, they're feeling fuller. They've also reported nausea, particularly in the coconut oil category, which I can understand because digesting or swallowing 45 mils of coconut oil for breakfast might be quite a challenge for some people. It's why I didn't volunteer for the study, because I said I'd only do it if I got macadamia, and my team said they wouldn't let me choose, so I didn't volunteer, unfortunately. Some people said coconut oil, again, doesn't agree with me. People said things like their skin's a lot healthier, their sleep patterns have changed. One person lost 7 kilograms, wasn't trying to lose weight, and has carried on post-study with the supplement of macadamia oil, which is quite interesting. So she's a non-LCHF person has elected to continue taking it. And the olive oil person said it was quite difficult for them to take. So why is this important to the industry? Well, we've talked a lot about consumer demand today. Consumers are looking to understand what the effect that oil and lipid supplementation has on their bodies. There's a hesitancy towards fat in the diet. There's the kind of fear the fat protocol, the low-fat generation, the Jayne founder generation is dying slowly, but we need to educate consumers in terms of the actual value of healthy fatty acids in their diet. It's critical that that shift changes so that we have 100% of you standing up when I ask a question like that in 10 years' time and into future generations. And we are very, very worried about what we're seeing globally, metabolically, with the state of the world at the moment. The diet has to change. We have to educate consumers as to why it's healthy to eat a higher fat diet. And of course, what we're hoping to do is turn this into a longer, more robust RCT where we can look really in a lot more detail at what's actually going on here on a metabolic level into the future. And just some information about the studies we've done. I think I've run over my time, so I'm not going to take more of your time. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Jayne, as well. So Mark is a MSc graduate at the university from the University of KwaZulu-Natal. Then he realized that Mpumalanga is better, so he actually moved to 97 over here, and he's been here the whole time as well at the Agricultural Research Council and Tropical and Subtropical Crops campus here in Nelspruit, and he's been employed. He has an interest in post-harvest science, specifically in plant physiology, and has conducted researches in this field for various subtropical growers. And research in the macadamia industry started in 2001. Since then, trials have been conducted together with SAMAC on a yearly basis, covering many aspects of the macadamia cultivation and the kernel quality. And I think one of your preferences is the whole fatty acid profile that we actually can hear some details about. Current projects then includes the investigation of new cultivation in the industry and the effect of rootstocks, as well as the establishment of productivity, and further trials to aim to determine the relationship in between cultivars and quantity, in particular his role and the role on fatty acid profiles as well. Mark is currently a council member of the South African Society for Horticultural Science. He's a South African representative for Council International Society as well, and he's done some research since 2019 for 2 years with the International Macadamia Research Development Center in China as well. Mark, privilege, thanks.
Thank you. Right, now that Jayne woke you all up with something interesting, I'm going to put you to sleep with everybody's favorite, some chemistry. This is necessary because we're going to discuss some terms later on that we all need to become familiar with. So just a very quick background here to oil chemistry. That's a typical triglyceride. It comprises a glycerol molecule with 3 fatty acids attached. In macadamias, there's around 12 different types of fatty acids that could sit there. It could be 3 different ones, could be 3 of the same. That's pretty much random. When triglycerides form, your glycerol molecule links to these 3 fatty acids. What's released is water. One of the points I want to make here is it's very critical that macadamia, when stored, is stored dry, because this reaction of forming triglycerides can run in reverse. If there's water present in your stored macadamia kernel, what we can do, or what we can get, is the release of fatty acids from the triglyceride to form free fatty acids. That's one of the things that's tested for to determine whether your product is good for export or not. So you don't want free fatty acids forming. Getting back to our triglyceride molecule, what you'll see is 2 main different types, or 2 broad categories of fatty acids. One, in this case, stearic acid is the example. It's fully saturated with hydrogen atoms. Okay, all of these carbons have 2 or 3 hydrogen atoms attached. So that's a fully saturated fatty acid. Alternatively, you get fatty acids which have double bonds. In the formation of those double bonds, hydrogen is released. These are unsaturated. So that's where the terms saturated and unsaturated fatty acids come from. In this case, there's 2 double bonds. It's a polyunsaturated fatty acid. In the case where there's only 1 double bond, it's a monounsaturated. So those are terms you've probably all picked up through your life, listening to margarine adverts. The other one is that omega term. We all know about omega-3, 6, and 9 fatty acids. We now know about an omega-7, palmitoleic acid. All that means is counting from, that's the alpha carbon in the chain, that's the last carbon, the omega carbon. Counting from the omega carbon, if your double bond is between carbons 3 and 4, it's an omega-3. Okay, so that's just a bit of terminology. One of the important characteristics of the unsaturated fatty acids, the mono and polyunsaturated fatty acids, is that they readily undergo oxidation. I'm not going to go through all of this. All I want to point out is there are processes which drive the oxidation, the addition of oxygen to these fatty acids to form peroxides. And that's the other important thing we all know about in the industry is peroxide value. You don't want your peroxides increasing during storage. Okay, so that's just a bit of background and terminology. I said there's 12 different fatty acids that are found in macadamia oil. That's them. Of these, the 16 and 18 carbons, palmitic acid, palmitoleic acid, stearic acid, and cisalleic acid make up about 90% of the fatty acid profile. Okay, so getting on to the oleic and palmitoleic acid fatty acids, those are the two main monounsaturated fatty acids in macadamia. Macadamia kernel has between 72, well, when it's mature enough to float in a flotation test, it has between 72 and 78, sometimes a little higher than 78% oil, of which between 81 and 86% is unsaturated, in other words, healthy oils or healthy fatty acids. Of that, those two, oleic and palmitoleic, make up around 80% of the profile. Olives, by contrast, they have around 30% oil content in some cultivars, of which 83% is oleic. So where we're sitting with two primary monounsaturated fatty acids, olives is primarily one. Okay, palmitoleic. I'm harping on about the palmitoleic because it's unique to macadamia. Well, not unique to macadamia, but unique to 2 or 3 crops. Macadamia is one of them. Sea buckthorn is another. There's not many other products that have as much palmitoleic acid as macadamia. I think this was in Jayne's or Daniel's slide, that palmitoleic plays a role in reducing insulin resistance. So palmitoleic, like oleic, plays a significant role in health. Okay, one thing we've got to be careful when you talk about these fatty acids and look at the literature. A lot of the work that's been done on palmitoleic was done on palmitoleic derived from dairy products and meat products in the older literature. And in those products, in animal products, palmitoleic tends to be in a trans-isomer form, whereas in botanicals, it tends to be the cis-isomer. And these isomers can differ in their benefits and their metabolism. So we need to be a little bit careful about drawing conclusions about macadamias when we start to look at studies that are done on other products. Okay, so it's just a word of warning. Okay, so getting on to what we did. This work that I'm talking about today grew out of observations that we made in a previous study on macadamia storage. In that study, we looked at the effects of various things. The style, storage temperature of bulk vacuum pack kernel, the storage time of the bulk vacuum pack kernel, and shelf time once that kernel comes out of the vacuum packing and is put into retail packages where there's air, it's no longer vacuum packed. And one of the things we looked at was seasonality. What's the quality like for early, mid, and late season macadamias? And we saw some significant differences in that seasonality. And we started to ask ourselves why. Why are the late seasons more susceptible to oxidation? The things that came to mind was the fatty acid profile, because as I've said, unsaturated fats oxidize more readily than saturated fats. So if we're getting more oxidation in late season product, does it mean they have more double bonds? Do they maybe have fewer antioxidants? In most products that have a lot of oil, there are antioxidants present to prevent the oxidation. Maybe that declines through the season. Perhaps these factors change not only between cultivars, but within a single cultivar that's harvested over an extended period. So these are the sort of things that we're looking to address in this study. Okay, so what we looked at was fatty acid profiles and oxidative stability. Do they differ between cultivars? Do they differ through the season? Do they affect shelf life? If the fatty acid profile changes, does your shelf life change? Are there regional differences? Some in KZN and inland, is their product going to differ? Do they change? Do fatty acid profiles change in dry bulk stored kernel? That's something that's in progress. I'm not going to talk about it today because that kernel is still stored. We still have to analyze it. And do antioxidants play a role? Okay, so as I said, there's shelf life trials in progress. That's actual trials involving stored kernel. What I'm going to talk about today is a proxy for shelf life. It's a tool we have available to us whereby we can expose kernel or the oil extracted from kernel to conditions that would simulate in a short time what would happen in kernel over an extended time. And I'm going to be talking about those those rapid oxidation tests. You might see in some of the slides it's referred to as a Ransimet test. What we've shown in past work is if you look at a rapid oxidation test, here we're inducing oxidation in 5, 10, anything up to 30 hours. And we compare that. Well, this is a study that's completed, by the way. So what we did is looked at rapid oxidation in the kernels before we put into storage, and we looked at its peroxide values a year down the line. And what you can see is this rapid oxidation test gives us a very good idea of whether the kernel is going to store well or not. So it's a good proxy for shelf life trials. Okay, so getting on to our fatty acid profile results. This is Beaumont, grown in Nelspruit, harvested on a number of different dates through the season, from late February through to mid-July. And this is a typical profile. You'll see those 4 fatty acids, I said, make up 90% of all the fatty acids. You'll see oleic acid is by far the most, that makes up the biggest proportion. You'll see in this case for Beaumont that it increases through the season from February through to July, a slight increase. The others, no constant trend through the season. But what you'll see is around 60% oleic acid in Beaumont. Looking at 816 on the same farm, you'll see here we've got about 65% oleic, around 15% palmitoleic. 814, the lowest palmitoleic content of all the cultivars, 10% or less, but very high oleic content, around 70%. And in Nelmac 2, around 60% oleic, around 20% palmitoleic. It has the highest amount of palmitoleic acid. You'll also see that as oleic increases through the season, the palmitoleic decreases. That's a trend that we picked up when you look at the metadata, look at all the samples for all the cultivars we've analyzed. One other thing that I've put up here is differences in the profile for Beaumont, harvested between late May and early June in 5 different areas: Hazyview, Nelspruit, Barberton, Port Edward, and Lavubu. There are differences between the different regions, but they're relatively small. As I said, there's a strong correlation between oleic and palmitoleic. As one decreases, the other tends to increase. So you'll see 814, for instance, it's the lowest palmitoleic value that we've picked up, but very high oleic. Through to Nelmac 2, very high palmitoleic and relatively low oleic. And there's another that data shown in a different format, just to show there's a very strong correlation between oleic and palmitoleic. As one increases, the other decreases. Okay, this is a difficult one for you to read. The cultivars are labeled on the bottom axis there. This is the complete data set, all the replicates, all the cultivars, all the dates. What I really wanted to point out, and I'll point it out for you because you can't really see it, is Nelmac 2 tends to be high on palmitoleic. And I've written it down here for myself because I can't read that either. 814 tends to be pretty low. In terms of the total saturation, the total saturated fatty acids to unsaturated fatty acids, something that comes out quite nicely here. We expect, because double bonds saturate easily, we expect an increase in unsaturated fatty acids to give us less stability. We expect more oxidation to take place. So looking at this graph, you'll see there's a lot of Beaumont sitting here, a lot of Beaumont with high levels of saturation. There's only four unsaturated to every saturated. Other end of the scale, 791, very high levels of unsaturated fatty acids. So we'd expect a lot more oxidation in 791 than in Beaumont. However, I'll get onto the however in a moment. Looking at oxidative stability, this is using rapid oxidation tests. Looking at 4 cultivars on one farm in the Hazy View area, you'll see here that Beaumont, the yellow lines, tend to have the least stability. They oxidize much more rapidly, despite having the lowest levels of unsaturated fatty acids. That's something that was not expected. In contrast, the grey line, 816, tends to be very stable, around 20 hours required to oxidize it. A different farm in Nelspruit, again, Beaumont tends to be the least stable of the cultivars in terms of its oxidation, and 816, a grey line, again, tends to be the most stable. I've just put both of those up so that we can see that there are actually regional differences. In Hazy View, generally 816 takes around 20 hours to oxidize. In the Nelspruit area, around 15. So we're starting to see regional differences between the oxidative stability as well. Okay, so that's all the cultivars, all the samples again put up on a single chart of induction times, and you'll see induction time runs from nearly 25 hours all the way down to about 3 hours. These are the most stable cultivars. Right at the top, we've got 741 and 842. We've got some 816s and 8203. Down the other end is where most of the Beaumont sits, at the least stable. Those two at the top, 741 and 842, what's very interesting about them is they show a lot of onion ring, a lot of discoloration. What we know is that the compound that gives that coloring is polyphenols, which are an antioxidant. So we start to ask ourselves, are antioxidants actually important in giving that high stability? That's part of the study that's ongoing. Okay, we crunched the data for a whole lot of things, comparing oxidative stability to each individual molecule in the profile. And we found really almost no correlations. You look at the levels of unsaturation, you look at the amount of oleics, you name it, we looked at it, very little correlations. And where there is some sort of correlation, it's very low. So this, for instance, is monounsaturated fatty acids. As they increase, there's a slight trend towards increasing stability. What popped out, that's still a low correlation, but it is the highest one we found, is linoleic. That's a fatty acid with 2 double bonds. It's present in relatively low quantities, but it's the thing that correlates, besides antioxidants, the thing that correlates mostly with stability. And when we start looking at cis-linoleic for the different cultivars, what we find is Beaumont has the highest levels of that. Things that are relatively stable, like 203, 741, 842, 781, they tend to have the lowest levels. So there seems to be an interaction between antioxidants and the amount of linoleic acid in terms of whether something is going to be stable in storage. Okay, so to just run through some concluding remarks, there are relatively large differences in fatty acid profile between cultivars. There's differences in single cultivars through the season. It's not necessarily a consistent trend. It can be up and down, but there are big differences. And there are differences in single cultivars between locations, especially when you start looking at the oxidative stability. This large variation is actually making it difficult for us to just pull out any single thing that contributes to oxidative stability. But what's popping out at the moment is cultivar effects are important, antioxidants probably play a role, and cis-linoleic acid seems to be the most important of the fatty acids. This is not part of the study, but sort of questions that are coming out. We still need to confirm the health status of macadamias, and specifically, not tree nuts in general, but macadamias. And I think our previous speaker gave you some feedback on that. I actually put this question up before I knew what her talk was about. If palmitoleic acid comes out as important, what do we do about that? Do we plant accordingly? Do we plant cultivars that have high levels? Do we attempt to find additional cultivars with high levels? So far in this study, we've managed to look at about half of all the cultivars that we're looking at in our new cultivar trials. There's still quite a lot of cultivars out there that we don't know profiles of. What's important, though, is if we're going to pick out individual cultivars for their fatty acid profiles, is the market or the marketing part of this industry up to marketing a single cultivar? That's not for me to answer, but it's just something to keep in mind. Okay, some acknowledgements. SAMAC. I just sat down and thought about it the other day. My first funded trial with SAMAC was in 2001, and I've had trials with you every year since over the last 20 years, and it's really been an enjoyable experience. The ARC, Precision Oil Laboratories in Zanin, they're the people who do the fatty acid profiles for us. They're very good. They're internationally accredited and give us very good results. And finally, the participating growers. No one has yet shot us for taking nuts off farm. There's occasional muttering when it's a lot, but they really do provide us with what we need for our trials, and for that we're very grateful. Thank you.
So Mark, I think thank you so much as well, and I think from the other side of the industry as well, is the work that you guys do is like groundbreaking as well, because I think the next biggest wave is actually going to be food waste. And it's all about shelf life, and it's all about stability, and it's all about that stuff. So the work that you guys is doing is really, really mind-boggling. Well done. So I think we've got another 15 minutes before Nico's going to chase us off as well. So if we can open the floor for questions, if there's any questions specifically.
Karen, there's a panelist coming up because I'm deaf, and
yeah.
she knows how to communicate. Even when my hearing aids are off, she can tell me I'm snoring.
No, she's going to translate for you. It's fine. Okay. So if there's any questions in the audience.
Daniel, I think the question that comes out of this presentation for me is how do we take this to the market? There's a lot of good work that's been done about the health benefits of macadamias, but I think we're not good at promoting that, and somehow we need to find that sweet spot where we can actually take all of this information to the market. And I think the more we can take this internationally, I think the better for our growers in South Africa. Yeah. And so maybe if we can just share some thoughts, and if I can use my authority, if we can stick to this one question and save time, because we're a little bit behind schedule.
Okay.
Daniel, yeah.
No, that's fine. If I may, from our experience, it's actually very, very funny. It's about industry and industry development. So if you look at the cashew industry as well, so there's no market research, there's no health benefits, there's no promotion, for the simple reason that the whole cashew industry is not organized, it's not structured, there's no one's going to fund it. If you look at the industry like the almond industry, there's a lot of money behind it, there's a lot of research, there's a lot of health benefits. You guys are very fortunate in the macadamia industry that you've got a relative small base that you operate from. So number one, you're operating from a small quantity to compare to the 400,000 tons of pecans or 1.6 million on almonds or whatever the numbers is. And you well confined as well. Your product sits exactly within that healthy profile. So the sooner you can actually start promoting it, and it's all mediums. So I think the first thing as well is that, it's about So within our mediums, what a lot of the people do is they actually tie up with like the retailers, and what we do is we start running campaigns where we actually telling the story as well, in terms of when the macadamia is growing, what is sustainable about it, what is healthy. So, I mean, whatever medium you can actually touch, I don't think it's one specific just item. I mean, we can propose a couple of items. So on the barcode systems of a bag, they've got the new app that you actually flash it. It tells the whole story about where the product coming from, where it's coming, who's growing it, who's looked after it, what the implication is. I think there's two sides. So one side is you guys need to protect what you've got because it's gold. I mean, you're really fortunate. There's no negativity. You are at some kind of risk, my opinion, in terms of the bees and the insecticides and the stink bug, which you guys need to kind of like put under control quite quick. So you don't have a risk. You need to manage the risk of negativity. And then the other thing as well, you guys need to we need to start telling the story. We need to start telling the story about what the health benefit is of macadamia, where it is, but we need that data information. I mean, the amount of work that, and it's not always about the scientific feedback about where the money is coming from. It is about someone looking at his farm and putting up a little school or some kind of, it's all those little stories. It's not just one big story. I mean, each processing unit's got a responsibility to tell about the farmers, to get that data into the market. They've got customers across the world. They need to share that data. So it's not just one thing. I mean, within the retail industry, we can do it. I mean, we can get the formal retail and formal industry. But it's once again holistic protection. I mean, you guys are all connected to the rest of the world in terms of your processing, your distribution. Empower those people to tell the story. Because remember, if we tell the story to our customer, they tell the customer, it becomes a beautiful story, and there's a sense of association, and people like to associate. So it is each processor's responsibility, it's each farmer's responsibility to go tell his processor what he's doing with it. He's got a feeding scheme, or he's got a school, or whatever, or he's sustainable. Then that processor needs to tell it to all their customers. I mean, you guys is connected across the world. You supply everyone across the world. Supply that message into them. Let them carry the stuff. They're going to use that data as well, because it's free marketing promotional data. And then I think from Samek's side, what you guys are doing here in terms of the research in the oil is beautiful. I mean, it's really great. And with that, you need to promote within the specific scientific items. Be very careful for specific areas. So let me give you an example. Be very careful of going into INC's magazine, because your audience is the INC, is us that knows all this stuff. Go outside. Go into the normal media, the huisgenoot is like a national Bible in this country. We had one ad in huisgenoot about chopped almonds and sold out 5 times. So I mean, go out of the normally, but it's everyone's responsibility. It's a constant thing. I don't know whether that answers your question. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, Jayne just wants to add something.
Is my mic on? So what we're seeing in the scientific world at the moment is, of course, the trend, the N=1 trend. Does everyone know what that is? So it's about that one person that lost 68 kilograms banting. That one person that went on all macadamia nut supplements and reversed their diabetes. So absolutely, it's critically important to understand the health benefits of macadamia nuts, but that's a massive piece of research that's going to happen, and it's going to take 10 years. So if we convert the study we're doing at the moment into an RCT, that's a 5-year multi-million-rand study. But telling stories and understanding the health benefits on a micro level is a really good place to start. So understanding, oh my gosh, this person reversed their diabetes by taking a nut oil supplement, they did this, they did that, and sharing that. And olive oil, why is olive oil so dominant in the world as the healthiest oil? When we look at that preliminary data of ours, it's not the case. So there has to be more research. We have to understand the health benefits. But consumers are very, very gullible. The last time I was in Colorado, I was standing in the Starbucks, and there was a dolphin-friendly pack of coffee on the shelf. I mean, I'm sorry.
It's true. Every little bit helps.